Good morning, everyone. I think yesterday most of you met James Montalvo, and I'm Daren Welsh. We come from NASA in Houston. And today we're going to give you a background of how we came to use MediaWiki and Semantic MediaWiki and what we've developed over the past couple of years.
And we're both up here. We had another coworker that was going to come with us, but he unfortunately was not able to make it. And he put together this whole presentation, and so we decided to do it together since he wasn't able to be here.
So a little background about what our everyday job is. We're actually not developers, at least we're not necessarily paid to do that kind of work. We work in mission operations, so there's a big group of a few hundred people at NASA that our job is to plan the operations, train the astronauts how to do those operations, and then during their mission, during their flight, we support them in Mission Control Center. And so within the entire organization, there are several groups that focus on certain aspects of the mission. Some people are in charge of the attitude control of the space station. Our group is in charge of when they go outside in the spacesuit and do an EVA or a spacewalk. So this slide just kind of shows the history of, it's now known as Flight Operations Directorate, before it was Mission Operations Directorate. But from the beginning, when we had the first suborbital and orbital missions and the famous Apollo missions back in the 60s, through the era of the space shuttle, and now in the era of the International Space Station, these are some pictures of the different flight control rooms.
And these are just some images of mostly of Scott in the top right and top left there, showing kind of the different things we do. Top left, he's demonstrating some hardware there, a very interesting pose, showing the two astronauts on his right and left, how the hardware can be lifted up. So this is some very high fidelity hardware that we do training with the crew. In addition to that, you'll see bottom right, we have very low fidelity hardware, or very low, not quality, but intended to not really totally function. It's just a plastic tool that he's holding there because he's underwater, and that makes it easier for him to hold it when he's underwater, and you just really need to train how to operate with the item, not so much the exact function of the item as you would do in the top left. Additionally, you see Scott there in the top right in spacesuit. He's about to go underwater. We get to do that occasionally. Most of the time, we end up working with the astronauts as they go underwater in the spacesuit.
So as with most organizations, we had a crazy mess of information. We had Word files saved on a shared drive. We had PowerPoint presentations that we used for training purposes. We had lots and lots of emails that were being archived on personal computers and laptops. And so anytime you needed to find some information, you had to know who to ask or where to find it in which directory. It's a common story. And there were many instances of conflict between documents as to which information was correct, which version was most recent, or even missing documents because they accidentally got deleted or moved.
So what we were hoping for, and what actually Daren has been working towards for a very long time, is attempting to come up with a single source of information, or at least a single hub of information. Sometimes there are certain things that are controlled within the NASA organization that we couldn't necessarily pull within our wiki, but we at least want to be able to have a single place where you go to the wiki and head out from there to the controlled information. So the real benefit to that, as many of you already know, is the amazing revision control that it provides, and really the searchability is what really changed it for our group, in that before we would have a Word document that might list where some information is, and then you go to that Word document, from there figure out where you're supposed to go, and you go to that place and the items are gone. So finding maybe a small piece of information like the mass of a tool, you need to be able to tell somebody what the mass of a tool is, might take 10 minutes to find. Now it's 2 seconds because you type in the search bar and you're there. So an example of a tool here, before I showed you, Scott was holding the plastic version underwater. This is the high fidelity, fully functioning version. Clearly he's using it outside of the pistol grip tool, which is a very high powered and computerized wrench, essentially.
You said he, that's not Scott.
Yeah.
That's Scott wishes he was an astronaut, as most of us do. But
so this is some examples of information about a pistol grip tool. We've got a part number, which is a fake part number there, but mass and excuse me, dimensions. We've got some information on torque data that the tool will provide, drawings. We've got anomalies. Often tools might not perform exactly as planned, and we need to be able to keep track of when things don't perform as planned. Then in addition, sockets are tools that you would use in conjunction with this tool, so things are very good to be able to have semantically linked.
So there's, we had to have a culture shift, as it says on the slide. There's a lot of hesitance to try anything new. I think this is common. People get set in their ways. They know, okay, well, if I want to find something, this is where I go find it. And they've learned that, but they don't think about how a new person might have trouble finding the same information, or they figure, well, they can just come ask me. But instead, let's not rely on all these little bits of where you can actually find the info. Let's just get the information out there. And so it's been an exercise in teaching old dogs new tricks. Teaching people the concept of just searching for something. Not everybody had that mentality. And the way that we got our group of roughly 50 people to adopt this method was by building a product kind of behind the scenes, just slowly building up our wiki with the same information. We actually, every couple of years, we have to do proficiency training to make sure that we don't forget all the important information. And rather than carving out time from our work schedule to build a wiki, we just did it alongside this proficiency training. So a couple of years ago, when I had to do my proficiency training, I started reading all the documents I need to read, but at the same time I copied that information into the wiki. And that way I was killing two birds with one stone.
And kind of along those lines too, I said before, we might go looking for some piece of information and it might take 10 minutes to find it. People quickly learned that 10 minutes that they just spent, they can save somebody in the future by taking that information and putting it into the wiki, and next time the person saves 9 minutes and 55 seconds of work time. So that was kind of another way that things somewhat organically got populated, or continue to be populated.
And as James mentioned, for many years I had tried to pitch the concept of using a wiki. In fact, even before Semantic Media Wiki existed, I tried to at least get the concept of using a wiki in general. And it's very hard for some people to visualize or conceptualize what it could do for an organization. So this time, the reason it worked is we actually had a working model, and we had some demos that we could show not only of the static data on each page, but the usefulness of queries to expose holes in our documentation.
One other item there about installing Semantic. I was speaking with a few of you last night. We didn't install Semantic right away. People have mentioned several times that we need better marketing within the Semantic Media Wiki community. To us, when we first read what Semantic Media Wiki was about, we kind of looked at it and said, yeah, we'll install that at some point. It sounds neat, but it doesn't seem like anything we need necessarily. And then some point 4 to 6 months down the road, we finally installed it, and we're amazed with what we could do. And from there, it's grown considerably, And that's really been one of the major things that's really astounded our management and other people, that makes it so valuable to be able to minimize duplication of information. So stuff is on one page and other pages can pull from it, but you only have to edit a single place.
One of the first things that made us stop and think about introducing the wiki at NASA was immediately all this information was very quickly and easily accessible. And so then the first question the management said, well, now you can find this information so easily. How do we protect it and make sure that the wrong people don't get it? It's kind of, you think about it, well, were we trying to hide it before? No, it's just that it was hard to find sometimes.
Security by obscurity.
It's like having a building and not marking any of the doors, which actually Mission Control Center is somewhat like that. So this actually, it forced us to answer some questions of which of our information is export controlled, which of it is available to anybody, and how do we deal with that. Of course, we had to start looking at some of the access control options, and with the Wiki Way, we were trying to push back and say, well, no, we need to make sure that we're not trying to divide this content up, and that we address this in the right way. Furthermore, the concept of Wikipedia is that, well, anybody can go in there and just add something wrong. How do we make sure that the correct information for this hardware is in there and someone doesn't go in and put the wrong mass and then we make a mistake in space? Well, it's a little bit different in that we have, this is our job. And if someone goes in there and maliciously adds some bad information, it's going to be tracked. They're going to have to answer to their boss about that. It's not quite the same as an open public wiki. So we talked about this a little bit earlier, but we had to demonstrate value. Why do we want to spend time using a wiki versus just doing things the old way? And as James said, it has become our portal. The first thing we're trying to get everybody on the mindset of, anytime you have a question, did you check the wiki first before coming down to my office and asking me? And people are starting to migrate to that. Furthermore, with the Semantic Media Wiki, we've identified several gaps in our products. So we might have a list of rules that we have to review before an EVA to make sure that we keep the crew safe. Well, a human going through that list of rules is bound to miss something or not be aware of a new rule. But because of our wiki, we've actually found gaps in those lists of rules for an actual EVA.
There are a lot of rules. It's very easy to miss. I personally have had that experience where you read through that list and you might not be aware that if you're going to a certain portion of the space station, there's going to be some hazard there. But semantically, it'll say this item is in that part of the space station and it has this hazard. So it really helps you catch a lot of things that were otherwise easy to miss.
And we've also been trying to get people to take the mindset of, this is everybody's product. This is everybody, not just for James and myself. We want every single person in the group to contribute. And we'll actually talk about that in the second talk this afternoon. So this, unfortunately, the screenshot didn't work out so well, but one of the applications that we've tied in with our wiki, we've tried to not just enter information into the wiki and have everything within it. We've also tried to integrate other data repositories already out there at NASA so that we're not repeating ourselves. And so NASA has this great website called Imagery Online, and it has pretty much any image you could want from any of the missions, all the way back through all the shuttle missions. And this page normally would have a whole bunch of thumbnails that you could scroll through to find the image you want. And so this page here on our wiki is actually just a query for each wiki page that has category tool, and it lists them in alphabetical order But the purpose is for if someone doesn't know what the name of a tool is, they can go here and say, okay, I know what that looks like, but I forgot the name. And they can just scroll through and click on it. And the majority of these pictures actually come from Imagery Online. We didn't actually have to import and upload all of these. We can just use them off of the Imagery Online site.
So Daren's going to talk more about meeting minutes later in a later topic. But one thing that we've really used to get our group involved and to make it useful on a day-to-day basis is capturing notes or minutes from meetings within the wiki. And so we have a specific form and template, etc., that when you're at a meeting, you take the notes in the meeting and basically specify topics, and for those topics you specify related articles. And as soon as you save your meeting minutes, any of those topic pages will get a link back kind of in the footer of the page to those meeting minutes. So now if I know that there was a meeting about the retractable equipment tether within the last year, I don't have to go dig through email or look on a share drive for the list of notes. Instead, I just go to the retractable equipment tether page, scroll to the bottom to the meeting minutes section, and I get all meeting minutes that have ever been in chronological order, and I can kind of scan through them and figure out which meeting that I'm remembering. So that's helped a lot in terms of just saving us a lot of work, but it's also been something that gets people engaged because they go to a meeting, they send out email meeting notes, and hopefully they get an email back from management or from us that says, hey, why don't you put those on the wiki? So it's kind of forcing them to get involved.
So of course there's a lot of information that could be wikified. That's a term we've been using lately at work, is any of this information that's stored away in a Word document or whatever, why don't we get that into the wiki and find out what we can do with it once it's got some semantic properties. So one of the things that Scott worked on, that's why he initially put this in the presentation, is he went through all of the mission history and started importing some of the metadata for that. And so we've got several examples of queries where we could show for every expedition. It's a little bit grayed out in the back, but it's basically all the past missions, list them chronologically and show some of the basic information like the crew.
Expedition is the name for a group of people going to the space station. So since it's kind of like one ongoing mission to the space station, each set of people that go are the expedition.
Yeah, sorry, make sure to ask us, even in the middle of the presentation, if we say some term that we just rattle them off and we don't think about it.
We're doing our best to convert from NASA speak. So here's another example of us being able to just, if I want to see everybody that's ever been a commander of the space station, I can pull that list up. This is actually a fairly simple example. The previous query was much more complex, showing, give me the list of upcoming expeditions and pull the crew members for that, so that I can quickly see, okay, I know that this person is coming up, but I'll see that they are 3 missions ahead before they're going to the space station.
So another way in which we tied into an existing technology is the inventory management system. So there's an entire group, much like our EVA group. They are in charge of where do we store everything inside the space station.
Which you can see is a difficult job.
There is so much hardware and there are so many places. I'm sorry, what?
It's Tetris, right?
Tetris, yes. Yeah. So that's Don Pettit back in the background. He does not have a barcode. So this is kind of the more complex interface for the inventory management system, but everything is listed in a directory tree structure, child-parent relationships as far as stowage locations, and you can search by either the alias, the common name, or you can search by part number, or you can actually go to a stowage location and pull up all the contents within there. And it's useful, but it's a little awkward. Sometimes it's hard to just do a quick search especially if you're in Mission Control Center and you need to have a quick answer for a crew member, it might take some time to go look this information up. There's another feature, there is a simple web page search where you can just search for a string and it'll return some results. So this is an example of if you search for EVA ratchet, you might get these results. So in our wiki, this is a page for the EVA ratchet wrench, fancy space version of a ratchet wrench. There's not much more to it other than it has a nice handle so your glove doesn't melt. So, you know, we have an info box with some basic information, and right here we have a link to IMS that will take you to that previous slide where it showed the search results. And then also James found a way to tie into that database and actually show some results in line. You want to talk through that?
Yeah, so this is something that we're not, we haven't totally rolled out yet, but or that we're not using extensively yet, but now we also can pull that information directly from the IMS database into wiki output like this. We've got a parser function called IMS where you just put in the part number and it'll list out all the locations with that kind of tree format. So it's kind of taking, one, you don't have to load up that whole big application that was 3 or 4 slides ago. Two, it's not showing you the whole tree, it's just showing you kind of the relevant part of the tree. And one other kind of future improvement to that will be we make a bot that allows us to go and run this IMS query on occasion and save it to the page and basically look and see if the IMS locations have changed at all since last time, and if so, then save it to the page. And then anybody who's watching the page will get a notification and be informed that these items have moved. So if you care about the EVA ratchet, you might care that somebody moved it somewhere. So it kind of gives a little more insight into where things are on the space station, which is a really big problem. We lose things in those huge piles of bags. I mean, not permanently lose, but it's, you know, we misplace them in those big, huge piles of bags. So being aware of when things are moving is a very important thing for people to know.
Yeah, the current system is that we talk with that other group whose job is to maintain the location of every object, and we send them a list of these things have moved from here to here, and then they go off and do their job of updating that database, and then it's on us to go check that database, I don't know, a day or two later and see that it actually was implemented. And unfortunately there have been cases where there were mistakes or the changes did not get incorporated, whereas this would actually provide some notification, a closed loop. So here's some statistics about our wiki. It's been about 2 years now that we've been running with it. It's a fairly small group compared to a lot of the other examples you've seen, and we expect all of our users, at least in the EVA group, so we've got 570 registered users, but of those 86 contributors, about 50 are in the EVA group. So we have a few people outside our group. We were given an award by the JSC director for innovation. That was a nice acknowledgement of our work. But we've started trying to expand. As I said, there's about 20 groups in the operations directorate, and so we've started setting up the other groups with their own wikis, and we've been experimenting in inter-wiki sharing with a wiki farm. You might talk about a little bit about your SharePoint. Yeah,
so 3 of those 4 new wikis had not really taken off so much yet, but one of them, and this kind of goes back to having the what do we call it, a critical mass of information before demonstrating it to people. 3 of these wikis, we just kind of started them from scratch and said, here you go, and they haven't really gone so far. But one of them, they were on a SharePoint wiki, and we made a script basically to do a direct conversion from their SharePoint wiki to MediaWiki. And so fortunately one day somebody from their group came over and said, hey, we'd like to try MediaWiki. You think it would be very difficult to convert it over? And it had been a couple days before that we had just done it to see if it would work, and we said, actually we already did. So So for them, they had that critical mass, and it was easy for them to get started, and they've loved it from the moment they've started using it.
So it'll be interesting, as a closing note, I guess it'll be interesting to see, we started off as both users and developers. We developed this out of need, out of want really, to try to improve our efficiency. Whereas now, as we introduce this to the other organizations, we will probably be the main administrators of that, providing them with a product, and so it'll be a little bit of a different approach. So we'll see if we can get them all started on it. So we got a few minutes left if you have any questions.
Thanks a lot for this exciting talk. It's really interesting to see that Wiki's even reached the outer space. So, are there any questions? Any remarks?
Are you able to share these slides?
The slides themselves are on semanticmediawiki.org.
Oh,
So
great.
if you go to our presentation and click, you'll see them there.
Thanks. Any other questions?
What's your attitude to types of content? Because we started out trying to dictate specifically the sort of things that are appropriate for the wiki and the sort of things that are not. But then we tend to find that users have their own ideas, so we have to be moving the goalposts all the time as a result of that.
So do you mean like uploading files? Like what types of files can be uploaded? Or?
Types, because originally we were going to put technical information up only, but we've had a lot of administrative stuff to do with organisation structures being put up.
So generally our attitude is, as it started, it was our proficiency training. So it was material that we had to train every 2 years. Let's go ahead and put that on there so that next time it doesn't take me 15 minutes to find it. But it's also casual information like, oh, how do I map to that printer? What's the address? Let's save it on the wiki so the next time I can find it. So really, my mindset is I have one downloads folder, and any kind of old emails I tend to delete, and I try to, if I want to retain that information, I find a way to stick it into the wiki somewhere where it makes sense, where I and others can find it later. And we try to stay flexible because I think if you force people to follow what you think is best, it may not work for them. And so we try to accommodate all of the users in our group and build new functionality for them.
I think that's a good point too about the laptop, is that I think this is more reserved to Daren and I and Scott and a few other people. Really try to have nothing on our laptops that's important, because laptops die, and so it's nice to be able to say my laptop could get coffee spilled all over it right now, and I'm stuck in Austria at the moment, but if I was at work, I could say, give me a new laptop and I'm up and running like that, because I try to make all my information on the wiki as opposed to central, as opposed to secluded.
First, thanks for this speech. It was very interesting to see that. And the outlines, we had a similar experience. They also got an internal reward for that, and then they were kind of made responsible to maintain wikis that were spread all over the house. So that's kind of similar. But one question, you mentioned that you have written a script converting SharePoint stuff into MediaWiki. I've never had that problem so far, actually, but is it publicly available, or?
It is on my GitHub account, so I can. It's my name, James Montalvo, and then the number 3 at the end. So it's on my GitHub account. There are no guarantees involved with it. I've used it a few times in a few different cases, and I always have to kind of massage it a little bit to make it work for a specific use case. It's flexible though. It's not SharePoint centric. It could really convert any web page. So what it does is it goes in and it finds it crawls the website and pulls from specific sections of the website the information that you want to wikify. So it could be converted into not just SharePoint. And in fact, part of it I've pulled out and made into a Word document converter. So I have a command line tool that you just type wikify and myfile.doc and it will convert it to wiki text and pull images out of it. It's also kind of shaky, but it's better than having to manually convert Word documents. So that's also on my GitHub if you're interested.
It seems to be really useful. Thanks a lot for that.
Sure.
You said you started with the wiki yourself for your personal use, and then after you gained the critical mass, you were talking to management. I just wonder how you got your wiki set up. I mean, in most companies, you first have to go through quite complicated process in order to get something set up like a wiki. Often because they don't run the Linux servers or they don't do MySQL databases or whatever.
Can we kill the video feed?
This is the answer already.
I created and maintained a kind of calendar program for displaying some of our training calendars. It's a simple program, but it was written PHP and MySQL. And there was a development server associated with that, and we used that as a, kind of developing to see if it would be a better method to do what we were already doing. So it was within the bounds of what was okay on a development server. It caused problems though because people within our group that we would share it with before we kind of had elevated it to higher levels. People within our group would look at it and see that it said whatever the URL is -dev or -development or something like that, and they'd say, "Whoa, I don't want to put my information on a development server and then have it disappear tomorrow." So until we got over that hump and we could move it to a production server, it was made it more difficult.
So yeah, that actually brings a good point between your question and the fact that we can't share our wiki because of the protected data. But we have talked about building a strong example of the power of semantic media wikis, such that it's hard to explain to management what this is without a real quick 1 or 2 minute demo. How do you explain this to someone that doesn't really understand the background? So we are working towards that now.
Cool.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
One small question. This looks great. I have one other question regarding the organizational aspect. The archiving, I guess, since NASA is, I don't know, a government organization, you must archive all your information.
Mm-hmm.
How do you fit your wiki into that process?
So it's an interesting question. For me, the only kind of archiving process, government archiving being sent to the Library of Congress kind of thing, that we've been involved with, that I'm aware of, is when the space shuttle program ended, a lot of that information had to be categorized and put together and then sent off wherever it goes. We don't have to deal with that on a daily basis, but if somebody were to say, hey, we need a snapshot of all of your current information, I'd say it's much easier now than it was when it was spread out between SharePoints and share drives and email and personal computers and all that, because we can do a data dump of the wiki and we're done.
Thanks.
Thanks. Any further question? Thanks a lot.
Thank you.